Good evening, my friends, and welcome to, I guess, part two. As I was interrupted, my son came home in the last video, which had already gone on a little longer than I figured it would. And that happens a lot, doesn't it? So I decided to make a part two, and I thought this is good because I had a full 15 minutes to think about a couple other things and what I really wanted to address in this. And the previous one was about Pascal's wager, whether we're better off to just believe in God than not believe in God, and whether that even matters, and how you define God and the term and how it's been tainted, on and on and on. You can watch that video if you choose. I'll post a link, or you can just look at my channel if you even see this video, because if you do, you're probably already a subscriber and you probably already saw the first one. So with that part of it out of the way, of why I believe what I believe and why I believe in a higher power, but it's ineffable, undescribable, and I have come to the conclusion for me that I have no desire to express it to anyone else, in the sense that I've never felt I had to prove what I believe to anyone else. Now, this is an often overlooked part of having true faith. In my belief, in my own personal experience, having true faith in something and true, wholehearted belief, you just don't have the need to prove it to other people. Now, I know within a lot of religions, they would argue that proselytizing is part of that belief system to spread the word of God. And I understand this to a degree, but for some, it's almost, they want to bring you into what they believe because often people are uncomfortable with what they believe. This isn't always true. This just is something I've observed in people in the past. And I say this because I believe everyone should be able to have the thoughts, ideas, and beliefs that they want that suit them in their life. And I have no problem with anyone's beliefs, so long as those beliefs don't cause them to harm anyone else. Even if those beliefs cause them to think horrible things, that's their choice. But acting upon those and putting another's life in danger, or raping the planet, stealing resources, without, doing any, mending to the area. Basically what's going on right now in the world with progress, and capitalism. I consider that to be, if there's anything in this world that is really evil or would represent evil, it would be greed. And that greed, of course, and abuse, hate, murder, all these things are horrible. But really, greed is the driving factor right now, because there are people out there physically hurting other people. But the way that we go about business is physically killing millions of people every year, just because of side effects of substances that shouldn't have been put on the shelf, poorly maintained structures that collapse or that explode, or whatever it might be, that we don't maintain the things that we already have in place because there's just more money to be made. But don't want to go into that, but the money is a huge part of what I'm going to talk about, which is the dark side of spirituality and religion. And the part that drives me insane, if there was one that really bothered me, it would be people like Kenneth Copeland. That motherfucker who rides on his private jets, has multiple jets, and when he was asked about it by a reporter, he got all pissy. He looked like a demon. Literally, if any human being in history that I've seen a lot of people speak on television, okay, this is a very popular and famous interview if you haven't seen it, but she confronts him and she's like, do you really need 2 private jets? And he's like, the Lord blessed me with this. And it was like a complete switch of modes. The guy looks like a monster already. But here's the thing that gets me and why he's a perfect example. People, millions of people around the world watch Kenneth Copeland, see this guy, and say, yes, he's my man. This is the guy that's close to God. What the fuck? I don't understand it. I cannot comprehend it. Like, what kind of a moron could look at this dude and say that guy doesn't look evil at all? He's asking you to send you basically his dentures. Hell, ST wrote a song about them, Suicidal Tendencies from the 80s. This band was, Mike Muir, the singer, was, always depressed and writing about his issues. And he made a song called Send Me Your Money. And back then it was about Jim and Tammy Faye Baker. And back in the 80s, they were the TV evangelists, the televangelists that everyone would call in and send them their checks to. There are stories of elderly people who sent all of their Social Security money to these people because of what they call the prosperity gospel. And if you're not familiar, then I would urge you to look it up and learn about it. Prosperity gospel is basically anything at this point that says, hey, if you put money into this, you'll get more in return, not through any actual mechanical means, but through God and the Spirit. It's basically send the church your money and we'll send money back. I got wrapped up in one of these when they'd send me the thing in the mail where they wanted you to plant a seed of faith. And so I started writing back and forth. This was when I was like 19, it was back in the mid to late 90s. And I wrote back to them and convinced them. They sent me a penny, and then I sent them back like 2 pennies, and then they sent me back like 3 pennies. It was something stupid to where I ended up with at least one more penny than I'd given them. And I was just wanted to feel out the system to see how far they would go. I think they ended up sending me $1, actually, and I kept that $1. And I was like, okay. And I read a bunch of stories, and this was pre-internet, or at least very early internet days in the late 90s, So we had, no real data on these kind of people. We couldn't look up their history or their criminal records or anything. If the news didn't cover it, they didn't cover it. And people are so desperate to believe these televangelists that they just watch them and don't pay attention to anything else that might say, hey, red light, red flag warning here. Do not give this guy your money. I mean, a guy who's flying around on a private jet and has another private Learjet in waiting, I think he had a few of them. But it doesn't matter. All of them do. Who's that new guy? The Joel Osteen, guys like him. Do you think a real preacher deserves to live in luxury? Why should they? Because they're modern day prophets to people. They want to carry them on chariots. It's basically this part of human nature, human psyche, is to desire and seek and find spiritual connection to ourselves through community and other people. It's really simple. The more we look at even, psychiatry, psychology, the people who are often missing the most and the unhappiest don't have any belief systems. It's just a fact. We might try to deny it and say, I don't care. I can just be an atheist, not care about anything else or anybody and just be alone. You can, but you're not going to be happy. Most people will not be happy unless they have some form of community, and church gave people that community. But churches are corrupted. And not all churches. Now, there are local town churches right now that you can go down to and people just talk about God. They may have their own versions of what the Bible means or whatever belief system it is. But there are people who just care about each other and community and want to sing songs. Once you get to a mega church, once you get to a church with thousands of people where they're wearing headsets and they're telling you about the people in the audience so you can pretend like you're healing them and that you already know about their disease and that God's giving you messages, and people find out about this and they still support you, well, that's disgusting. But it teaches us a valuable lesson that people don't care about the facts. They just want to believe shit. And that was just the religious side. That's just Christianity. I'm sure there's plenty of it in Islam. I'm sure that there's plenty of that shit. I know that there's a ton of it in India, which I'm going to get into because I consider that most of it is not based on the Bhagavad Gita or any particular religion, like Hinduism. A lot of this is separate. It's like the occult version of Hinduism, where they want to teach, tell you that everything that you've learned is wrong, and these gurus know what's best. They might be the reincarnation of some great leader, some great teacher. But can you hear that? My dog decided to just push the door open and go in and start drinking out of the toilet. Is that beautiful or what? She has a water dish. Dogs are weird. So anyhow, Are you done, Lucy? Okay. Yeah. Okay. Hi. Are you gonna come in here or what? You get stuck in the curtain? You can come up if you want, if you can get up. Oh, hi. Hey, baby. Hi. Hi. Yeah, my baby doggy. So, as I was saying, in the spiritual world, in this, I'm going to close the door over here, in this crazy world of, there's charlatans out there who want to tell you that everybody else is wrong, all the other spiritual advisors are wrong, and they have it all figured out, and all you have to do is just send them money for their course. How to find your five-dimensional self. How to self-heal. I was subscribed to a couple of these email lists just for the hell of it. I don't recall exactly how I got on them, but I ended up getting... I probably still, because it was an old email I got rid of, but all of these expos for conventions and things down in Sedona, Arizona, and these retreats and these crystal healing ceremonies. I honestly, look, as a dude who grew up like hippie style in the 90s, long hair and tight eyes, who burned Nag Champa incense and meditated and, basically was in the, really into the occult and the alternative medicine, everything, and I still am. I'm disgusted by the bullshit that these charlatans pull, the kind of crap they try to tell you about these miracle healing potions. Yeah, I sold mushroom extracts for a while because mushrooms are good for you, but I didn't claim that they're going to cure everything and fix cancer and make your life totally easier. It's like you can't make these promises when you're selling certain products like food. Why can you make them spiritually? Well, because people don't understand the placebo effect as well as they think they do. It's not just taking medicine where you take a pill and it's a sugar pill and it works only because you thought it worked. That happens all the time. I know, Lucy. I know it does. It's frustrating. And it's also placebo effect when you believe that, well, there's the nocebo effect where you make yourself sick. That's another one. But a lot of these people try these practices like Reiki and crystal healing, and they think that they're healed. And the truth is, they might be, but they're not attributing it to the right reasons. Now, if somebody's charging a modest price, that's fine. But we're talking like people are selling these courses and these healing sessions for like hundreds or thousands of dollars. Then you sign up for these courses, And look, I can smell a fucking scam a mile away. I can smell a charlatan a mile away. I do not fall for bullshit scams, especially if somebody's promising me some spiritual truth, because they ain't got it. They don't. Any true guru worth his weight in gold will give away his knowledge, whatever it might be. Doesn't mean a person can't get paid for the services they provide, but they won't hide things and say, well, you behind a paywall. They will not hide information behind a paywall. If somebody asks me something, like a question about something I know, I would never say, oh, you have to buy my book to find out. Like, what kind of an asshole says something like that? Well, a capitalist, of course, but I mean, we're all little capitalists, but that's not the point. A true guru wouldn't find such trivial earthly matters as important. But so many of them don't just drive Ferraris or live in mansions, but actually end up being abusers, especially of women. A lot of Indian gurus end up abusing women. What the fuck, dude? You're given all this power and you claim to have spiritual truth, but almost all of them end up getting in trouble. Not all, okay, but all the big ones. And this is the key here that I'm getting at. Just like mega churches in the US, we've got the huge gurus in India. And I don't know much about Muslim culture. They're a little stricter. They probably just whip each other into shape. But there's I would imagine that Islam probably doesn't tolerate scammers as much. I mean, you can't make even a likeness of Muhammad. They're probably very strict about their policies regarding selling merch that ain't legit. That merch has got to have the stamp of approval by the government. But sometimes I wonder, like, maybe that's better because people are so fucking dumb. No offense to anybody, because we're all smart. I know you and me are smart. But, God, there's a lot of doofuses out there. There really are. And it's just a fact we got to face. They exist. And a lot of them push the buttons and pull the levers that make society work. We're all part of this, so we got to work together, even when we have different opinions on things. But the fact that all of us are desperate to make some connection spiritually in some way, whether we admit it or not, we want to understand something about the universe and why things are so weird, and the things that we've experienced, and synchronicities and psychedelic journeys and everything. It's just like, what is this? We don't have a lot of time to sit back and think about it. Our brains kind of shut that down. It's like after we dream, when you forget your dreams right away, but you have these crazy dreams. It's kind of the same thing with like a revelation. Like, you just kind of forget it because you're like, that's just too much right now. But even when you do remember and you're able to process it, it's very hard to implement these things in our lives. So anyway, everybody's struggling to kind of find their own truth. And amidst that, we have these charlatans running around saying, hey, dude, if you want to get closer to yourself, you just got to sign up for my course. You just got to come to my mega church. You've just got to send and plant this seed of faith. You can't plant a seed of faith and expect God to return your money just because you... Really? Okay. It's all good. Real life, man. It is what it is. But for me personally, I guess I find God in everything around me. The spirit, the soul, the connection to other people. My wife, my kids are a huge part of my life. The, biggest part of my life right now. But at the same time, I realize... my kids will grow up and they'll leave home eventually, but they'll still be my family. I have friends. I've lost, I've gained. Just trying to live this life the best I can. And even I, with my own awareness that I have about life, I've still found myself falling for people's bullshit. Like, maybe this is true. Maybe this would work. Some of the stuff is iffy, right? Like, taking certain minerals or supplements, or everybody wants to believe that there's a hidden cure for this or that, and that that there's some spiritual practice or a certain way we put our legs or a certain pose that'll bring us the truth or some happiness. It doesn't work that way. It's just a constant practice. And anytime we're paying individuals to help us in our spiritual practices, please be really aware and consider how much money you're spending. There are folks down in LA, Hollywood, Beverly Hills, making a killing as some life coach for, lost movie stars or millionaires. And hey, if that works for you, great. But when it becomes to this spiritual advisor shit and people tell you you just need to cleanse your chakras, run. Reiki, for example, I know people who practice Reiki, but I have to tell them it's only 100 years old, like 120 years old. It was some dude who went to a mountaintop in Japan like 120 years ago and asked for some revelation, and he said, well, just lay your hands on like this, and there's no even actual real authentic version of the practice. Like, there's many different ways people do it. I understand it comes down to contact healing. Fine. If people believe it works and you believe it works, great. But charge accordingly. It should never be something that people can't afford. If you lay your hands on somebody to heal them for, 20 minutes, how much do you think you should get paid? $200? That's the kind of money people charge for this shit, I'm sure. All this type of healing, there's a holistic center down the street where they do that kind of stuff. And it's like, okay, I've done acupuncture, I've done meditation, I've tried yoga, Kundalini yoga. It's kind of painful, but it was great. Had some great experiences. But allowing another human to dictate the proper way to do that just seems so in the past. I mean, doing it with a group of people is one thing, but paying an individual to tell you how to be spiritual, that's when it gets a little weird. So that's my ramble for the night about spirituality and God and all that crap. And we want to say goodnight and much love. And no disparity to anybody else's beliefs, whatever you might believe and whatever works for you. Honestly, when I was younger, I was the kind of guy who'd throw a Bible out of a window. I did that once at a motel up in Seattle. The Gideon's Bible, I threw it like down this mountain we were on the side of a hill and down onto this highway. Yeah, it wasn't very responsible, but I was angry at religious people for the way they'd treated me, like I said. And now I just don't care because I realized they were desperately seeking to prove their point, and I don't have to buy into it. I don't have to react to it. I don't have to care. And that made it a lot easier for me to say, look, when I saw what happened, look, I'm going to just leave on this final point because this is the most important thing I want to convey. I heard a few years back something that I'd always considered but never really processed, which is that if people lose religion and abandon belief, society falls apart because people become depraved and, they lose hope. And I said that's complete bullshit. All right. I said, I do not buy into that. I think that's nonsense. It's just a way for others to try to convince people to believe what they believe. The older I got and the more I watched people and talked to people about their own needs and desires and wants, I realized that there's something our ancestors knew that we're trying to abandon. And especially those who are, let's say, on the hard left. This idea that religion is the enemy. It is not the enemy. People just need to believe in a way that's constructive, and most people do. Just like there's a few troublemakers on both political sides, there's only a few troublemakers in the world of, religious folk as well. Most people just believe what they believe. I think it's very important that we have something to believe in that we can agree on. This is why societies could flourish for 1,000 or more years in the past, and in times of total turmoil and war. They stuck together because they had a common ground, a common purpose. That is what we've lost. I know it's just progress. Some people would say it's just the way the world is, and it is. But that cohesion of belief, I believe personally, is what kept societies together. I'm not saying we can achieve that, because that would mean that we all have to believe the same thing, and that's not going to happen. But what we should all have faith in is each other, and that it's okay to believe what you want if no one's harmed, right? It just seems like a simple concept. Not chastise each other, make fun of each other's beliefs, but charge a fair price for your services if you do spiritual stuff, Don't be a fucking mega church pastor that has to fly in a Learjet. If your people are giving you that much money, make sure that they can actually afford it. Don't make them feel guilty because they can't afford it and they have social security checks. And if you do make that money, buy shit for the fucking homeless in your neighborhood or the people who need help, around the world, instead of buying a bunch of fancy cars and crap. But no, people are going to do what people are going to do. So be wary, very wary of individual gurus or spiritual leaders who claim to bring you the truth. Beware of anything that has the word truth in it is probably not the truth. Find a spiritual connection. Otherwise, you'll find something else that's going to take that place. There's I kind of never got to that point on that, but what I was going to say that if people don't have religion, not only do they go into kind of a depraved mode, it's because they don't have something to grasp onto. They might go politically and have their politics become their religion. In other words, this is why we are so far left and right, is what some people say. Why we've taken extreme stances and why people are so dug in on shit that 20 years ago, we didn't care about all this crap. You know, there was no such thing as climate anxiety. People just watch the news and they hear that the climate's going to shit, and then they start panicking, even if their neighborhood's fine. You know, it's like weather changes all the time. Yeah, the planet is warming. Yeah, maybe we need to deal with this shit. But are you going to wake up and worry about it every day? That's not going to help anything. You know, the world's got a lot of issues, but it shouldn't be our personal problem. I feel like the issues have replaced spirituality in a way, or God. People just want to believe in something, so they take a stance and a cause. And that's why we should all bond together on the spaghetti monster. And that's my final take. Peace out.